I used to think betrayal was something you saw in movies. Dramatic music swelling as a villain twirls his mustache and declares, "I've been deceiving you all along." But betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes, it sneaks up on you like a thief in the night, slipping through cracks you didn't even realize were there. For me, it happened at what was supposed to be a perfect evening, our annual family reunion. I remember the scent of rosemary chicken wafting from the kitchen, mingling with the sounds of laughter and the occasional clink of glasses. It was one of those nights where everything felt warm, effortless, normal. Except, if I had paid attention, I would have noticed the abnormality in it all. Evelyn, my wife, was radiant, more radiant than usual. Her smile stretched just a little too wide. Her laughter rang out just a little too loud. She moved through the crowd like she was hosting an awards gala, not a casual family dinner. And the way she looked at my cousin Ryan? That was the biggest sign of all. Ryan had always been the charming type, the kind of guy who walked into a room and commanded attention without trying. Growing up, he was the one the girls fawned over, the one the uncles raised their glasses to. I never envied him, never felt the need to compete. But tonight, there was something different in the air, something unsettling. I should have seen it coming. But I didn't. Not until the moment Evelyn stood up, mid-dinner, her wine glass held elegantly in one hand, and smirked. "I have something to say," she announced, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. The room fell into silence. My father, who had been in the middle of his usual speech about family values, froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. My mother's eyes darted between Evelyn and me, sensing something off. I set my own glass down, my fingers curling against the table. My gut churned, screaming at me to brace myself. Evelyn turned her gaze toward me, and in that moment, I saw it, the unmistakable satisfaction in her eyes. Like she was savoring this, like she had rehearsed it 100 times. "I'm leaving you," she said. Someone gasped. "But that's not all," she continued, her lips curving into a slow, deliberate smile. "I'm leaving you for Ryan." The weight of her words crashed over the table like a tidal wave. There was a loud clatter as someone dropped their silverware. My uncle, Ryan's father, stiffened, his expression morphing from confusion to disbelief. My mother's face twisted into something between horror and fury, her hands gripping the edge of the table like she needed to hold herself in place. And me? I just sat there. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. Evelyn's smile faltered just slightly. She had expected a reaction, a loud, chaotic outburst, maybe a shattered plate, maybe even me flipping the table in a fit of rage. But instead, I took a slow sip of my wine, letting the tannins settle on my tongue, then set the glass down with care. "Is that all?" I asked. Evelyn hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. She wasn't expecting this. She wanted drama. She wanted me to crumble in front of everyone. Ryan, sitting across the table, shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't smirking like Evelyn was. No, he looked like a man who had just realized he walked into a lion's den dressed as a gazelle. "Clara, I know this must be shocking," Ryan started, his voice oddly unsteady. "Not really," I interrupted, standing up slowly. My gaze swept over the room, the tension in the air thick enough to choke on. "Though I am curious about one thing." Evelyn lifted her chin, trying to regain control of the moment. "And what's that?" I tilted my head, staring at Ryan with something that almost resembled amusement. "Did he promise you a share in the company?" The blood drained from Evelyn's face. Around us, murmurs broke out, hushed whispers between relatives who were trying to process what they had just witnessed. "Because," I continued, reaching into my pocket for my phone, "that might be a little complicated." Ryan's jaw clenched. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Oh, you'll find out soon enough." I tapped the screen of my phone, my lips curling slightly as I glanced at Evelyn. "But by all means, don't let me stop you two from celebrating your grand announcement." Evelyn's confidence wavered. I could see the flicker of doubt, the unspoken "what does he know?" twisting behind her eyes. "Clara," she started, but I was already walking away, my fingers tightening around my phone. I didn't need to make a scene. I didn't need to throw insults or demand answers. Because what Evelyn didn't realize, what she never saw coming, was that I had known about this affair long before tonight. I had seen the late-night messages. I had heard the whispered phone calls. I had found the receipts, the secret weekend trips, the money being siphoned from our accounts. I had known. And I had planned. She thought she was humiliating me tonight, that she was winning. She had no idea what was coming next. As I stepped outside onto the terrace, the cold night air wrapped around me, stealing the warmth from my skin. Behind me, the chaos of the dining room continued, relatives whispering, my mother fuming, my father demanding answers. But none of that mattered. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to Simon, my lawyer. It's time. My breath curled in the air as I stared up at the night sky. They thought they had played me, but they had walked straight into a game I had been setting up for them. And now? Now, it was my turn to play. People expect betrayal to break you. They expect tears, anger, screaming, some kind of emotional explosion they can whisper about for years to come. They want to see the cracks, the humiliation, the absolute unraveling of a person who has just had their entire world shattered. That's what Evelyn was expecting. That's what Ryan was expecting. It's what everyone in that room was expecting. But they didn't get it. Instead, they got me, calm, composed, and in complete control. As Evelyn's dramatic announcement settled like a bombshell in the middle of our family reunion, the silence in the room stretched unbearably long. No one dared to speak. No one dared to breathe too loudly. The tension was thick, suffocating, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for my reaction. I took my time. I didn't rush to respond. I simply lifted my wine glass, took a slow sip, and savored the moment. The moment where Evelyn realized she had severely miscalculated. She had envisioned this scene in her head. I was sure of it. She had probably spent weeks planning for it, practicing her lines, imagining the way I would crumble under the weight of her betrayal. But now, as I looked at her, standing there with that forced confidence, her fingers gripping the stem of her own glass just a little too tightly, I saw it. Doubt. A flicker of uncertainty, quickly masked, but there nonetheless. I placed my glass back on the table with a deliberate, measured movement. Is that all? I asked. The murmur of stunned whispers rippled through the room. Evelyn blinked, her lips parting slightly. What? I said. I leaned forward slightly, resting my forearms against the table. Is that all? I just want to make sure you've finished your little performance before I respond. She glanced at Ryan, almost as if she needed reassurance. Ryan, to his credit, tried to school his expression into something resembling confidence, but I could see it, the unease creeping into his posture, the way his fingers tapped anxiously against his knee beneath the table. You don't have anything to say? Evelyn finally managed, tilting her chin up in defiance. Oh, I have plenty to say. My voice was smooth, unhurried. I'm just wondering if it's worth saying it now, or if I should wait until dessert. A few awkward chuckles broke the tension, but most of the family remained frozen, their gazes darting between Evelyn, Ryan, and me like they were watching a high-stakes game unfold before them. Evelyn narrowed her eyes, her fingers flexing around the stem of her glass. She didn't like this. She wanted chaos. She wanted me to break. And when I didn't, she grew nervous. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, like I was just so exhausted by all of this. I suppose I should congratulate you, I said finally. You really put on quite the show. Evelyn's brows furrowed. What are you? I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. It's funny, I continued, tapping on the screen. I always thought if my wife ever betrayed me, I'd be the last to know. That I'd be blindsided, devastated, shattered. I exhaled a small laugh, shaking my head. But you know what's interesting? Evelyn said nothing. Ryan said nothing. The entire table sat deathly still, the tension now shifting into something else, something darker. I've known for months. The words dropped like a hammer, and I watched Evelyn stiffen, her face paling slightly. What? She breathed. I didn't bother looking at her. I kept my attention on my phone, scrolling through my photos. You weren't very careful, I said casually. Text messages, late-night calls, even the receipts you left lying around? Honestly, Evelyn, for someone so determined to betray me, you really should have tried harder to cover your tracks. A gasp came from somewhere in the room. I think it was my mother. Ryan cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Listen, Clara. I held up a hand, cutting him off. I wasn't talking to you. He shut up immediately. Evelyn's throat bobbed as she swallowed, struggling to regain control of the moment. I don't know what you think you know. Oh, I know everything. I finally looked up at her, my gaze pinning her to the spot. I know about the trip to Aspen. I know about the little gift you bought him last month. I know about the money. Her eyes widened. Money. I smirked. Oh, there it is. The moment she realized she had lost control. Ryan, I said, turning my attention to him now. Tell me something. Did Evelyn promise you a cut of the company? Ryan stiffened. Evelyn's head snapped toward him. Don't answer that. Too late. The reaction itself was confirmation. A cold, heavy silence settled over the room as understanding dawned on the rest of the family. My uncle, the man who had always been Ryan's biggest supporter, suddenly looked ill. You stole from us? My uncle whispered, his voice shaking. Ryan turned ghostly white. Uncle, I didn't let him finish. I tapped my phone screen one last time, and the TV on the far wall lit up. Text messages, bank statements, secret transactions. It was all there, displayed for every single person in the room to see. A stunned silence fell over the table. Evelyn let out a strangled noise, something between disbelief and horror. Ryan just stared at the screen, his lips parted in shock. Surprise, I said dryly. Evelyn shot up from her chair. You had no right. Oh, I had every right. I cut her off smoothly. You were the one siphoning money out of our accounts. You were the one sneaking around behind my back. You were the one who stood up at our family reunion, thinking you had the upper hand. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. How's that working out for you now? Evelyn's breathing was uneven, her hands trembling at her sides. Ryan finally found his voice. This is a setup. I arched an eyebrow. A setup? Ryan swallowed hard, his gaze darting to the screen where his name was listed next to several fraudulent transactions. I didn't, he trailed off, looking completely lost. Evelyn, tell them. But Evelyn wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. And for the first time all night, I saw real fear in her eyes. Because she knew. She knew this wasn't just about an affair. It wasn't just about her humiliating me in front of everyone. This was about the game she never realized she was playing. And I had just flipped the board. I pushed back my chair and stood, smoothing out the hem of my shirt. I think we've all had enough excitement for one night, I said. I glanced at Simon, my lawyer, who had been sitting quietly in the corner this entire time. Shall we? I asked him. Simon nodded, already reaching for his briefcase. Evelyn took a step forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Clara, what are you doing? I gave her a slow, knowing smile. Oh, sweetheart, I murmured. You'll find out soon enough. And with that, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving her, Ryan, and the entire room reeling in my wake. Most people think revenge is impulsive, that it's fueled by raw emotion, by the need to lash out in the heat of betrayal. That's not how I do things. Evelyn and Ryan might have expected me to react like a scorned spouse, crying, screaming, maybe even throwing a drink in their faces at the family reunion. But that's exactly why they lost. They had no idea who they were playing with. See, I don't act on emotion. I plan. And I had been planning this for months. The moment I knew. It started 3 months ago, on a Tuesday evening. I was working late in my home office when Evelyn's phone, which she had left charging on the desk, lit up with a text message. Normally, I wouldn't have looked. I respected privacy. I trusted my wife. But this message? It was different. A simple, 2-word text that changed everything. Miss you. I stared at the screen, waiting for the sender's name to appear. And when it did, my blood turned to ice. Ryan. My own cousin. At first, I told myself I had misread it, that it was innocent, that I was imagining things. But my instincts whispered something else. Something colder. So I did something I had never done before. I picked up her phone. And I scrolled. And what I found, it wasn't just an affair. It was a full-scale betrayal. Late-night messages. Weekend getaways I thought were work trips. Stolen money. Ryan wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using our marriage as a cover to siphon money from my business. They thought I was blind. They thought they were getting away with it. So I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her. I wouldn't tip my hand. I would play along. And when the time was right, I would burn everything they built together to the ground. Setting the trap. The first thing I did was call Simon. Simon wasn't just a lawyer. He was my lawyer. The kind of man who could smell deception a mile away and dismantle it with surgical precision. I gave him every detail. The messages. The transfers. The undeniable proof of their little scheme. You sure you want to handle it this way? Simon asked after a long pause. Because if we do this, there's no coming back from it. I didn't even hesitate. Do it. So Simon started pulling the threads. He traced every bank transfer Ryan had made using company accounts, tracking the stolen funds like breadcrumbs leading to a trap. He found dummy accounts, fake business expenses, and more than enough evidence to bury Ryan alive. I had him exactly where I wanted him. The second step? Making sure Evelyn was legally tied to it. It wasn't hard. She had unknowingly signed several documents linking her to Ryan's fraudulent transactions, thinking she was just signing off on harmless business expenses. That's what happens when you trust the wrong man. And now, she was about to learn just how costly that trust was. Playing the long game. Once I had all the evidence in place, I did something they never expected. I acted normal. I didn't change my routine. I didn't act suspicious. I kissed Evelyn goodbye every morning, told her I loved her, even asked about her day. I let her think she was fooling me. Meanwhile, I was building her downfall piece by piece. I started laying financial landmines, setting up protections to make sure that when I took action, she wouldn't get a dime from me. I froze our joint accounts without her knowledge, quietly moved my personal savings to a separate entity, and ensured that every single penny she thought she was entitled to was legally out of her reach. I also hired a private investigator. Not because I needed more proof, I already had plenty, but because I wanted every possible angle covered. Every time she left the house, I knew where she was going. Every time Ryan sent her money, I saw the transaction. And every time they met at that little boutique hotel downtown, I had it documented. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to destroy them. The final touch, their own personal hell. Knowing about the affair was one thing, but letting them walk into my trap, thinking they were untouchable, that was the masterpiece. A week before the reunion, I made my final move. I met with my company's board members in secret. Ryan, as it turned out, had been embezzling from the company, not just me. And what's the best way to handle a man who thinks he's smart? Let him think he still has control. I let him keep taking money. I let him think I was oblivious. And then, the day before the family reunion, I filed an official fraud complaint against him. The beauty of it? By the time Ryan even realized what was happening, it would be too late. The big reveal. And then, finally, came the night of the reunion. The moment I had been waiting for. Evelyn had planned this night thinking it would be her victory lap, the grand unveiling of her new life, her new man. She had no idea she was about to step into her own funeral. When she stood up and smirked, thinking she was the one dropping the bombshell, I had to fight the urge to laugh. Because the real bombshell? That belonged to me. I let her have her moment. I let her think she was winning. And then, I flipped the game on her. By the time I pulled out my phone and projected the bank records onto the TV screen, she was already dead in the water. Ryan? White as a ghost. Evelyn? Breathing uneven, fingers trembling, realizing in real time that she had been played. And me? I was just getting started. Because exposing the affair was just step one. The real destruction? That was coming next. Checkmate. Before I walked out of that room, I made sure everyone in my family knew exactly what had happened. My father, disgusted. My uncle, Ryan's father, furious. Evelyn and Ryan were expecting anger. What they got was isolation. No one spoke up for them. No one defended them. They were cut off completely. And as I left the room, phone in hand, I sent one last message to Simon. Execute the next step. Because exposing them at the reunion? That was just the appetizer. The main course? Legal annihilation. And trust me, I was going to savor every bite. Betrayal doesn't just break hearts, it breaks trust. It shatters the very foundation of relationships, leaving nothing but rubble and unanswered questions in its wake. And if there's one thing I know about family, it's that once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. Evelyn and Ryan weren't just facing my wrath. They weren't just dealing with the consequences of their affair and financial fraud. They were about to lose everything. Not just me, the entire family. And the best part? They didn't even see it coming. The silence before the storm. The moment I exposed them, a strange, almost eerie silence settled over the dining room. It wasn't the silence of awkwardness. It was the silence of realization. The realization that two people sitting at this very table, two people who were supposed to be family, had betrayed not just me, but all of us. Ryan sat frozen, his face pale, his lips slightly parted as if he was about to say something, anything, to save himself. But there were no words that could fix this. Evelyn, always one to maintain a polished, put-together image, had completely lost that mask. Her hands trembled as she clutched the edge of the table, her nails digging into the linen like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the ceiling fan and the distant laughter of my younger cousins in the backyard, completely oblivious to the war that had just erupted inside. And then, it started. My father's wrath. My father was the first to react. Now, my father isn't a man of many words. He's a man of action, a man who built his legacy from the ground up with sweat, discipline, and sheer force of will. He's the kind of man who shakes your hand once, and if you break that trust, there is no second chance. So when he slowly pushed back his chair and stood, the weight of his presence alone was enough to make the room feel smaller. He turned his gaze toward Ryan. Not a word was spoken. Not yet. But the disappointment in his eyes was heavier than any insult, any punishment, any consequence. Stand up. Ryan flinched, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. Uncle, I said stand up. This time, Ryan obeyed, though his knees wobbled as he did. He looked like he wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. My father exhaled sharply, as if trying to contain a lifetime of rage. You are my nephew, he said, his voice steady but cold. I have known you since you were a child, and in all my years, I have never been more ashamed of someone in this family than I am right now. Ryan dropped his gaze to the floor like a guilty child. You stole from us. My father's voice grew harder, sharper. From your own blood. From the company that has put food on your table since the day you were born. Ryan opened his mouth, maybe to defend himself, maybe to beg, but my father wasn't done. And for what? My father scoffed. A woman who was never yours to begin with. Ryan flinched at that. Evelyn sucked in a sharp breath. But my father wasn't finished. You think this was just about you and Clara? He shook his head, his disappointment turning into something closer to fury. This was about all of us. About trust. About loyalty. About the values this family stands for. He took a slow step closer to Ryan, who seemed to shrink under the weight of his stare. You are dead to me. Gasps erupted from around the table. Ryan jerked back like he had been slapped. Dad, he choked out, turning toward his own father, my uncle, desperate for some kind of defense. But there was none, because my uncle wasn't looking at him. He was looking away, like he couldn't even bear to acknowledge the son he had raised. Like Ryan wasn't his blood anymore. Evelyn's turn. Evelyn had spent most of the exchange sitting in stunned silence. But the moment she realized she was next, she snapped out of it. This isn't fair, she blurted out, her voice breaking. This has nothing to do with the rest of you. This is between me and Clara. No, my mother cut her off, her voice steady but filled with quiet rage. This was between all of us. Evelyn's lips trembled as she looked around the room, but no one, not a single person, met her gaze with anything but disgust. Even the family members who had always been fond of her, who had always defended her, were now seeing her for what she truly was. A liar. A cheat. A disgrace. You stood up at this table, my mother continued, her voice rising now. At a family dinner, in front of people who welcomed you, who trusted you, and you laughed in our faces. You thought this would be entertaining. Evelyn shook her head quickly, her eyes welling up. I didn't think. No, my mother said. You didn't. Another round of silence. Then, my uncle spoke. He had been silent this whole time, but when he finally lifted his head, his voice was lethal. Get out. Evelyn's face twisted in shock. What? You heard me, he said, his voice void of emotion. Both of you. Get out. Ryan looked absolutely sick. Dad, please. My uncle didn't even flinch. You are no longer welcome in this house, he said. In any of our homes. Evelyn's chest rose and fell rapidly, her panic setting in. But you made your choice, my father cut in, his voice final. Now live with it. The final blow. Ryan and Evelyn didn't leave right away. Not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't know where to go. There was no one left to turn to. No one offering comfort. No one offering a way out. They had burned every bridge, every relationship, every ounce of goodwill they had ever had in this family. And I stood there, watching it all unfold. Watching as Evelyn's perfect plan fell apart. Watching as Ryan finally understood what he had lost. By the time they finally made their way toward the door, their faces were pale, hollow, stripped of every ounce of arrogance they had started the night with. But just as they reached the threshold, I spoke one last time. Oh, I said casually. One more thing. They turned, hesitant, fearful. I smiled. Have fun explaining all of this to the authorities tomorrow morning. Evelyn's breath hitched. Ryan's eyes went wide. And before they could say another word, before they could try to beg, or plead, or bargain their way out, I turned my back on them. And just like that, they were gone. When Evelyn and Ryan walked out of that house, humiliated and cut off from the family, they thought that was the worst of it. They were wrong. That was just the beginning. Because while they were scrambling to figure out where to go, who to turn to, and how to salvage their mess, I was already 5 steps ahead. See, stripping them of their dignity was satisfying. Watching their arrogance crumble, seeing the sheer panic on their faces when they realized they had no allies left, that was a victory all on its own. But revenge isn't about theatrics. It's about consequences. And for Evelyn and Ryan, the real consequences were about to begin. The moment they realized they were screwed. It started early the next morning. By then, Ryan and Evelyn were holed up in some cheap hotel room on the outskirts of town. Because, of course, they had nowhere else to go. Evelyn couldn't exactly return to our home. Ryan couldn't go back to his father's house. And none of our relatives would even take their calls. So they sat there, desperate and clueless, until Ryan's phone rang. And that's when reality hit them like a freight train. It wasn't a concerned friend or a sympathetic family member on the other end. It was his company's finance department. More specifically, it was the head of fraud investigations. Ryan sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes, probably thinking it was just a routine call. But the moment he heard the words, "urgent review of financial discrepancies," the color drained from his face. "What?" he croaked out. I don't understand. What discrepancies?" The woman on the other end, a no-nonsense accountant named Margaret, wasted no time. "Mr. Dawson," she said, her tone professional but firm. "Our internal audit has uncovered multiple unauthorized transactions linked to your account. You'll need to come in for an immediate review." Ryan shot up from the bed, running a shaky hand through his hair. "What transactions?" There was a pause. Then, Margaret said 2 words that made his stomach drop. "Luxury expenses." Evelyn, who had been lounging in bed, oblivious to the firestorm that was about to consume them, sat up at that. Ryan felt the sweat on the back of his neck. I don't know what you're talking about." "Then you should have no problem coming in to clear it up," Margaret said. "Today." Ryan's mouth opened, but no words came out. Because deep down, he already knew. He knew exactly what this was about. The fall of Ryan Dawson. By the time Ryan arrived at his office later that morning, the company had already begun its full-scale investigation. And by investigation, I mean they were tearing through every account, every transaction, and every financial record with a fine-tooth comb. Simon, my lawyer, had made sure of that. See, I hadn't just exposed Ryan at the family reunion for dramatic effect. I had done it strategically, timing it perfectly so that his company would be forced to launch their own inquiry before he had a chance to cover his tracks. And now, Ryan was sitting in a cold, sterile conference room, surrounded by stone-faced executives, as they laid out his crimes in black and white. Embezzlement, misuse of company funds, unauthorized transactions. The numbers didn't lie. He had stolen thousands from company accounts, covering up his personal expenses under bogus consulting fees. Vacations, jewelry, expensive dinners at 5-star restaurants, all paid for with company money. And now, he was facing immediate termination and legal consequences. Ryan tried to argue, of course. He tried to stammer out some excuse, some pathetic attempt at explaining it away. But the evidence was irrefutable. By noon, he was escorted out of the building by security, his employee ID deactivated, his personal belongings shoved into a small cardboard box. His career? Over. His reputation? Destroyed. His future? Gone. And the best part? It was all his own doing. Evelyn's turn to crumble. While Ryan was getting obliterated at work, Evelyn was facing her own personal nightmare. She had spent the morning making calls, trying to withdraw money from our accounts, only to find that they were all frozen. She tried using her credit card, only for the transaction to be declined. She tried accessing our joint assets, only to realize they were no longer joint. Because I had made sure of that. See, while Evelyn was too busy sneaking around with Ryan, I had been working with Simon to legally cut her off from everything. I had quietly moved my assets. I had legally protected my savings. And most importantly, I had removed Evelyn from every single financial tie to my life. So when she tried to call her bank, her lawyer, anyone who could help her, she got the same answer. I'm sorry, ma'am, but your name is no longer associated with these accounts. And that's when panic set in. Because for the first time, Evelyn understood that she wasn't just losing me. She was losing everything. The knock at the door. By late afternoon, just as Ryan was leaving his office in complete disgrace, Evelyn was pacing in that dingy hotel room, trying to figure out what the hell to do next. That's when there was a knock at the door. She hesitated, her heart pounding. Slowly, she walked over and pulled it open, only to find two uniformed officers standing outside. Mrs. Dawson? One of them asked. Her mouth went dry. Yes. The officer held up a piece of paper. We have a court order for a financial inquiry into fraudulent activity, he said. You'll need to come with us for questioning. Evelyn's entire body went rigid. What? She whispered. This is in regard to multiple unauthorized financial transactions. The officer continued, handing her the document. You are required to appear for questioning regarding your involvement. Evelyn's breathing became uneven, her hands trembling as she read the paper. Her name, her signature, all over the fraudulent transactions. Her mind reeled. Ryan had promised her this was safe. Ryan had told her there was nothing to worry about. But now she was being investigated for felony-level financial fraud. She tried to speak, tried to protest, but no words came out. Because deep down, she already knew the truth. She had walked straight into my trap, and there was no way out. The final blow. By the end of the day, Ryan was unemployed, his reputation in ruins. Evelyn was facing a legal inquiry, frozen accounts, and financial devastation. And me? I was sitting in my lawyer's office, sipping a cup of coffee, watching it all unfold. Simon looked over at me, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. You really planned this down to the last detail, huh? I smiled. Of course I did. He chuckled, shaking his head. So what's next? I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Now, I said, now we watch them lose everything. And as I sat there, calm, collected, and completely at peace, I realized something. Revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about making sure the people who betrayed you never recover. And trust me, Evelyn and Ryan never would. People think revenge is the final step. That once you've crushed the people who wronged you, once you've watched them fall, you can finally move on. But I've learned something important. Revenge isn't the end. It's the beginning. Because the moment you take back control, the moment you strip the betrayers of everything they thought they could take from you, you don't just walk away. You rebuild. And that's exactly what I did. The weight finally lifts. The morning after Evelyn and Ryan's downfall, I woke up to an unfamiliar feeling. Peace. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up with dread clawing at my chest. I didn't feel the weight of suspicion, the quiet suffocation of betrayal lurking just beneath the surface. Instead, I felt free. I stretched out in bed, taking my time getting up. There was no urgent text from Simon, no new piece of evidence to gather, no next move to calculate. Because I had already won. I walked through the house that used to feel tainted by Evelyn's presence. And for the first time, it felt like mine again. No more hidden lies. No more whispered phone calls. Just silence. Just me, cutting the last ties. Before I could truly move forward, there was still one last thing to take care of, finalizing the divorce. Evelyn had tried to fight it. She had tried calling, leaving voicemails, even sending long, desperate emails. Clara, we need to talk. Please, just hear me out. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never responded. She had made her choice. Now she had to live with it. Simon made sure the process moved quickly. With all the financial fraud charges pending against her, she had zero leverage to fight for anything. By the time the final papers were signed, she had nothing left. And that's when it really hit me. I wasn't just getting rid of a cheating wife. I was cutting the last remaining tie to a life that was never meant to last. And it felt good. Rebuilding myself. With Evelyn out of my life and Ryan buried under the weight of his own downfall, I finally had space to breathe, to start over. And that started with putting myself first. I took a trip. A real one. Not like the vacations Evelyn and I used to take, where I'd spend the whole time watching her check her phone, wondering who she was texting. No, this trip was for me. I flew to a quiet little town on the coast, checked into a boutique hotel, and spent my days doing whatever the hell I wanted. I woke up early to watch the sunrise over the ocean. I read books I had been meaning to read for years. I walked through open-air markets, tried new foods, had conversations with strangers who didn't know me as Clara Dawson, the woman who was betrayed. They just knew me as Clara. And for the first time, that was enough. The business expansion. While I was regaining my peace, my business was thriving. Simon and I had already started restructuring things at the company, making sure every last bit of Ryan's corruption was erased. Once the dust settled, the board members, who had once been wary of me, uncertain if I was capable of running the business alone, changed their tune. Because I didn't just survive what Ryan did. I turned it into an opportunity. With him gone, I had full control to take things in a new direction. And within weeks, I did. I expanded our reach, brought in new investors, streamlined operations. Under my leadership, the company didn't just recover. It grew stronger than ever. And every time I saw Ryan's name pop up in the news, his reputation in ruins, his career permanently destroyed, I knew I had made the right call. Evelyn's final attempt. I should have known she wouldn't go quietly. About a month after everything crumbled, she showed up at my office. Uninvited. Unannounced. She looked different. She wasn't the poised, confident woman who had once stood at our family dinner and smirked as she destroyed our marriage. No, this Evelyn was tired. Her makeup didn't quite cover the exhaustion in her eyes. Her clothes, while still expensive, were no longer effortless. She looked like someone who had lost everything. And I guess, in a way, she had. "Clara," she said, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. I didn't move from my chair. I just folded my hands in front of me and raised an eyebrow. "I need to talk to you," she continued. "Please." I tilted my head slightly, pretending to consider it. "About." She swallowed. "Us." I let out a quiet laugh. "Us." I repeated. "There is no us, Evelyn." She flinched at that, but pushed forward anyway. I made a mistake. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "Which part?" I asked. "The part where you cheated on me with my cousin? The part where you stole my money? Or the part where you stood in front of my entire family and humiliated me for sport?" Her bottom lip trembled. "I didn't mean to." "Stop." She blinked. I exhaled slowly, then met her gaze with a level stare. "You didn't come here because you regret what you did," I said calmly. "You came here because you regret what it cost you." Evelyn said nothing, because she knew I was right. She had burned every bridge, and now that she was drowning, she was looking for a life raft. But I wasn't her lifeline anymore, and I never would be again. I stood, smoothing out my blazer. "I'm not angry, Evelyn," I said. "I'm not bitter. I don't hate you." She looked up at me, hopeful. "I just don't care anymore." And with that, I walked past her, leaving her in my past where she belonged. Looking to the future. That night, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, staring out at the city skyline. Everything I had worked for, everything I had fought for, was finally mine. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking backward. I was looking forward. Because that's the thing about revenge. It's not about getting even. It's about building something better than they ever imagined. And I had done exactly that. So when my phone buzzed with a new business opportunity, one that would take my company to the next level, I smiled. Because my story wasn't over. It was just beginning. People like Evelyn and Ryan never really learn their lesson. They don't wake up one morning with a sudden epiphany, realizing how deeply they've betrayed the people who once cared for them. They don't sit in quiet reflection, feeling genuine remorse for the destruction they caused. No, people like them don't regret what they did. They regret getting caught. And when the dust settled, when the weight of their downfall truly hit them, they didn't look inward for answers. They looked for someone to blame. And that someone was me. The desperation sets in. After the financial collapse, the legal battles, and the utter destruction of their personal and professional lives, I should have expected that they'd try to crawl their way back into the spotlight. But what I didn't expect was just how pathetic that attempt would be. I was in my office when the first news article broke. A coworker forwarded it to me with nothing but 3 words. "You're going to love this." I opened the link, and there it was, a public interview featuring Evelyn. The headline alone made me snort. The betrayed woman. Evelyn Dawson speaks out on the scandal that destroyed her life. The betrayed woman? I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Evelyn's pathetic PR attempt. Evelyn had somehow managed to book herself a sympathy interview, the kind where she could paint herself as the real victim of the situation. She sat in front of the camera, dressed in muted tones, her makeup just smudged enough to suggest sleepless nights. It was a performance, a desperate attempt to rewrite the narrative. I was blindsided, she told the reporter, her voice soft, fragile. I never meant for things to happen this way. Clara was cold, distant. Our marriage had been broken for a long time, but I didn't know how to leave. I nearly choked on my coffee. Cold, distant? Was that before or after she was sneaking around with my cousin? The reporter leaned in, playing along. So, you're saying you felt trapped in your marriage? Evelyn nodded, sniffling. Yes. And Ryan, he was there for me. He understood me in a way Clara never did. I laughed out loud at that one. The man who was currently jobless, bankrupt, and facing fraud charges? Yeah, I'm sure he really understood her. The best part? The reporter never mentioned the stolen money, never mentioned the fraud case, never mentioned that Evelyn had been legally cut off from every dime she thought she was entitled to. It was all about painting her as the heartbroken woman who had simply made a mistake that just happened to include infidelity, deception, and financial theft. But here's the thing about rewriting history. Sooner or later, the truth comes out. My turn to set the record straight. I could have ignored it. I could have let Evelyn play out her little fantasy in the media and let her think she was in control of the story. But I had spent too much time playing defense. Now, it was time to go on the attack. I made one phone call, and 2 days later, a new article dropped. The headline? The truth about the betrayed wife. New evidence of financial fraud and deception. Evelyn thought she had won the public's sympathy. But that's the thing about sympathy. It only lasts until people realize they've been lied to. The public backlash. The article exposed everything. Not just the affair. Not just the betrayal. But the money. The fraud. The illegal transactions. And this time, it wasn't just words. It included screenshots of bank transfers, text messages, and legal documents. All of it undeniable. The internet exploded. Comment sections turned against Evelyn in real time. So she wasn't trapped in her marriage. She was just stealing from her wife? Got it. This woman went on TV and lied. And expected us to feel bad for her. I hope she enjoys explaining this in court. She tried to fight back, of course. She tried to release another statement. But the damage was done. The media turned on her. The same outlets that had propped her up as the victim were now tearing her apart. And the best part? Ryan, who she had ruined her life for, had already cut and run. Ryan's cowardly escape. The moment things got ugly, Ryan did what Ryan does best. He disappeared. He stopped answering Evelyn's calls. Stopped defending her online. Stopped pretending that they were in this together. Because as it turns out, when you build a relationship on lies and stolen money, the moment that money runs out, so does the relationship. I found out through a mutual acquaintance that Ryan had moved 2 states away, trying to rebuild his life under a new name. Apparently, the fraud case was worse than even I expected. He wasn't just looking at fines. He was looking at possible jail time. And Evelyn, she was left to deal with the mess alone. No money, no allies, no reputation. Just the cold, harsh reality that she had burned every bridge she ever had. The last time I saw her, it happened a few weeks later. I was walking through a shopping district when I saw a familiar figure sitting outside a coffee shop. It took me a second to recognize her. She looked smaller, defeated. There was no designer outfit, no glossy hair and expensive perfume. Just a woman who had lost everything. She saw me. Our eyes met. For a second, I thought she might say something. Might try to apologize. Might try to make excuses. But she didn't. She just looked down, shoulders sagging. And in that moment, I knew. She finally understood. There was no comeback from this. No way to rewrite what had happened. She had made her choices. And now, she had to live with them. The true victory. Revenge isn't about making them suffer. It's not about dragging them down to your level. It's about rising so high that they become irrelevant. And that's exactly what I did. While Evelyn was drowning in the wreckage she created, I was building something new. My company. Thriving. My personal life. Stronger than ever. My peace. Untouchable. I didn't need to forgive her. I didn't need to hate her. I just needed to forget her. Because at the end of the day, she wasn't worth remembering. They say time heals all wounds. I disagree. Time doesn't heal. You heal. You decide whether you let the past consume you or whether you use it as fuel to build something stronger. For a long time, I thought Evelyn and Ryan's betrayal would define me. I thought it would always be the first thing I thought about in the morning and the last thing on my mind before I slept. But I was wrong, because eventually, I stopped thinking about them at all, reclaiming my life. There's something powerful about waking up one day and realizing you are no longer controlled by the people who hurt you. For the first time in a long time, I was living for me. No more watching my back. No more waiting for the next lie, the next betrayal, the next disappointment. I had survived. I had won. And most importantly, I had moved on. A new purpose. I didn't just rebuild my life. I transformed it. My business, once something I had worked tirelessly to build while Evelyn and Ryan drained me from behind the scenes, was now thriving under my leadership alone. With the weight of their deception gone, I expanded. New ventures, new opportunities, new success. And the best part? I was doing it on my own terms. For so long, I had been building a future with someone else in mind. A future I thought Evelyn and I would share. But now, I was finally building for myself. And that kind of freedom? It's priceless. The people who stayed. If there's one thing betrayal teaches you, it's who really belongs in your life. When Evelyn and Ryan's scandal erupted, the people who truly cared about me didn't just stand by my side. They fought for me. My parents. My true friends. The people who didn't just love me when things were easy, but who stood beside me when things got ugly. And as I moved forward, I made a promise to myself. I would never again waste time on people who didn't value me. Because loyalty is earned. And once someone shows you who they are, believe them. The last conversation. A year had passed since the night of the family reunion. A full year of rebuilding, healing, and becoming the person I was always meant to be. And then, out of nowhere, I got a call. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Hello. There was a pause. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. Clara. Evelyn. I didn't say anything. I just waited. I don't know why I'm calling, she admitted. I guess I wanted to hear your voice. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. What do you want, Evelyn? Another pause. She hesitated. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For a brief moment, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just emptiness. Because I realized, in that moment, that her apology didn't matter. It wouldn't change what she did. It wouldn't undo the choices she made. And most importantly, I didn't need it. So I said nothing. And after a few seconds, she whispered, "Do you ever think about me?" I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. "No, Evelyn," I said simply. "I don't." Then I hung up. And just like that, she was gone. The power of letting go. That was the last time I ever spoke to her. And when I put my phone down that day, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's not about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about letting go of the power they have over you. Because when you stop thinking about them, when you stop wondering why they did what they did, when you stop letting their memory take up space in your life, that's when you truly win. And I had won. Not because I had destroyed Evelyn and Ryan. Not because I had gotten revenge. But because I had built a life so great, so full, so complete, that they no longer mattered. Your story isn't over. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever been hurt by the people you trusted most, I want you to remember something. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are not a victim. You are stronger than you know. And the best revenge is living so well that your past becomes irrelevant. Because at the end of the day, people will betray you. People will disappoint you. But you hold the pen. You get to decide how the story ends. So make it one worth telling. The final victory. I don't think about Evelyn anymore. Or Ryan. Or the betrayal. Because my life is so much bigger than that one chapter. It's filled with success, happiness, love, and peace. And they're just a footnote. A reminder that I once let the wrong people in, but that I was strong enough to rise above it. So if you're in the middle of your own storm, if you're drowning in betrayal and heartbreak, remember this. One day, you'll wake up and realize you've won. And when that day comes, you won't even care. Because you'll be too busy living the life they never thought you'd have.